Up here. This is Maverick Willett. You guys give him a hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. I want to play a quick video for you guys. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
I didn't realize what normal was for me or what optimal was for me because I haven't been there for so many years. It's pretty emotional to go there and to finally feel good again. I feel good in my skin. I feel like I'm on the right path, lifestyle choices and bioidentical hormones, but my anxiety is great. I literally jump out of bed. I'm like, okay, what is going on here? My bed's actually comfortable. Honestly, for the first time in 10 years, maybe even 15, I have a sex drive. I choked with your team. I said, and I don't even know if I should share this, but I said, I was in the laundry room doing laundry and I smelled my husband's scent and I was like, oh, we have to take a step back because I was like, oh my God. And that feeling of wanting sex has never been there for me. Or, you know, I've been deficient in those hormones. So for me, that was, and for my husband, if I'm being truthful. So that was really good because it's important. We don't talk about it enough. And I think the more women I talk to and the more I say, you know, especially moms, you know, who are already exhausted and taking care of small children. I'm taking care of teenagers. The last thing we think about is our sexual health because we're so exhausted. We're just like, oh, it's one more thing someone needs from me. But when you have that hormone to say, oh, I actually want that, you know, is a good place to be finally.
How many of you want to feel like that? Most of us, right? So I could get up here today. At the end of the day, I'm a man talking to women about women's shit. So I want to start off with one of our clients at Slay to kind of give you a picture of what life can be like when, whether you are starting to feel like crap, if you're, and I know there's different age ranges in here. We have, I think Jenny said, from age 26 all the way up to 60. And so this is relevant to all of you because when it comes to your hormones, you want to be proactive. And so I'm going to talk a lot today. There's going to be a lot of information, but just in case you don't trust what I say, I wanted to show that first. So we're going to talk about unlocking the secrets to your hormonal balance today. I'm Maverick Willett. Before I even start, again, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my beautiful wife, Kate. I would not be doing anything that I'm doing without her. So thank you. She's also taken on the important job of clicking the clicker on the laptop too. And a huge thank you to Jenny for having me and hosting this huge event. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today. I'll give you a little bit about me if you give a shit and why I care. We'll talk a little bit about what we do. I'll talk about the struggle a lot of you are facing. I'm going to give you a bit of a hard truth about fat loss, but it's one that will set you free. And then I'm going to blast you with hormone information that you likely will not get anywhere else. So I'm very excited about that. Hope you are as well. We'll wrap up and have a free gift at the end. So at that time, you'll want to have your phone ready to take a picture, but hold off till the end. But I'll give you a free gift. So who the hell am I? Thank you, Jenny, for bringing up the Speedo days. Appreciate that. We're going to act like she didn't say that. But yeah, I'm first and foremost, I'm a dad. I am a husband. I've been coaching in the fat loss space for almost a decade, and now I'm lucky enough to do that with my wife. We don't influence, we educate. I am not a doctor, and so I cannot prescribe, cannot diagnose. I'm backed by a medical team at Slay Hormone Solutions, and I've gotten a lot of education in the hormone space, but I am not a physician. And last but not least, I'm not a woman, and I will never firsthand know what any of you go through, nor know what that experience is like, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's a total hysterectomy, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. I will never go through any of that, but I have a lot of compassion for what you go through. And that's what today is all about. I am an ISSA certified fitness nutritionist and personal trainer, which means absolutely nothing. I am a level 1 and 2 graduate of the Academy of Preventative and Innovative Medicine by WorldLink Medical. That's where I get in a huge room full of OBs, cardiologists, physicians, and endocrinologists, and we all learn about hormones together, because unless you go out of your way as a physician, and our resident physician would tell you this, unless you go out of your way to get that education on hormones, they don't generally teach this stuff in med school. And so I was lucky enough to receive that education. I'm an Army Ranger veteran, and I've been in the body transformation coaching space for almost a decade. Why do I care? That's my mom. My parents were both Yeah, she's jacked. My parents were both competitive bodybuilders, and so I grew up in a very unique environment where we talked about nutrition, we talked about hormones. I learned all this stuff at a very young age. I squatted next to my mom. She out-squatted me until I was about 18. So I had a very unique upbringing, but my mom was way ahead of her time when it came to hormones, when it came to things that we're just now starting to get knowledgeable about, things like NAD, things like, progesterone, estradiol, testosterone. She knew the importance of this stuff 20, 25 years ago. And so I was very lucky to come up in that. My mother has been on BHRT for 20 years now, progesterone, testosterone, and estradiol. She's postmenopausal, and she, setting that example for me, has kind of been a pioneer who led the way for, a lot of women. And everything that I learned from her has only been confirmed as I've gotten more and more educated about hormones. Some of the biggest reasons why I care, though, I've been working in the body transformation space for almost a decade, and the same recurrent issue kept coming up. We had a lot of women who were checking the boxes. They were walking, they were strength training, they were eating enough protein, and yet the scale was barely moving. And at the end of the day, as a coach, you're just like, what the hell is going on? On top of that, they go see their doctor. They tell them, hey, I'm experiencing these symptoms. I can't sleep, I got night sweats, hot flashes, I'm experiencing a host of symptoms. And either the doctor would say, well, honey, that's just part of life. You're in menopause now, and send them on their way. Or they would, if they even do lab work, they would get the labs, and if they fall between two hash marks, they would say, well, you're normal, and so there's nothing I can do. Throw up their hands, and now you're left with nothing, leaving more discouraged than when you went in. And so that happened so much that I got tired of it, and knowing what I know about hormones, decided to start a hormone solution for women who have a lot of issues getting quality care with hormones. For men can go to a clinic and say, hey doc, I'm tired, I've got a spare tire, I've got erectile dysfunction. Before he's even done talking, the doctor is writing a prescription for testosterone. He doesn't even have to explain his case. Meanwhile, women have to jump through hoops and advocate for yourself. So if today is about anything, it's about giving you all the encouragement to advocate for yourself, because you absolutely can and you should, because it can literally dictate the quality of life that you have for the rest of your life. In perimenopause and menopause, we see a 40 to 70% increase in obesity and overweight. Just being obese, being overweight, that much of an increase going into those stages of life. And a lot of that is due to losing the hormones that gave you vitality for 40 plus years. Women on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy lose body fat. It prevents excess weight gain. You live longer, healthier, happier lives, and you don't kill your husbands, which is the best part. And so again, if you don't take my word for it, these are some testimonials from some of our clients at Slay. Again, I know at the end of the day, I am a man talking to women about women shit, but these are a lot, I could only fit this many on the screen, but this is some of the feedback we've gotten. So this part's about you. Show of hands, how many of you are experiencing the following? My body changed overnight and the same stuff doesn't seem to work as well anymore. Just quick show of hands, how many of you feel like that? Okay, a few. Nothing I've tried seems to stick. So you've thrown everything in the kitchen sink of this thing, every diet, every workout plan, and it's just like none of it's working, okay? I feel fatigued, I can't sleep, my belly fat has taken up permanent residence. Okay, a few more. My doctor tells me I'm normal when I don't feel fucking normal. Quite a few. And so I also want to reiterate, if you're not yet entering this stage of life, whether it's premenopause, perimenopause, maybe in your early 30s, it is so important for you to listen to what I say today so that you can be proactive, because the more proactive you are and the earlier you have optimal hormones, the better your results will be. The longer your hormones are optimal, the better it gets. Here's what you're facing. So these stages of life are inevitable. There's nothing that we can do to keep perimenopause and menopause from happening. And I want you to start viewing it for what it is, which is a hormone deficiency. Perimenopause, you've got the hot flashes, the trouble sleeping. Some of the symptoms are very similar to menopause. We'll just call it early onset menopause. Menopause is all of the above, except you get the dreaded menopause belly. And I'll explain why exactly that happens, plus chronic fatigue. On top of that, and this is where women really suffer compared to men, men have one hormone that declines, testosterone. That's it. Women can have up to 5. Estradiol, progesterone, DHEA, thyroid, testosterone. All of that can decline, which can make your life a living hell. On top of that, as Jenny mentioned prior, there's a lack of real good information on social media. You scroll away from one of mine and Kate's videos, you see 10 talking heads telling you something exactly opposite of what we just said. And so when you get that type of mixed information, and it's even worse in the hormone space because you have influencers telling you a detox tea can balance your hormones. And then you got another guy saying that you need to take this plant or this supplement. And so it gets really, really confusing, and that can lead to feeling pretty hopeless. There's a lot of unethical companies out there who say they provide hormones. I won't name any names. Winona. They don't even require lab work, which I think is very dangerous, unethical. If you don't require lab work in order to prescribe someone hormones, there's one of two things happening. One, you're either very, very just negligent, or your hormones are fake. Because no company in their right mind is going to take on the liability of giving people real hormones without prescribing or without requiring lab work. Then you've got sources of information putting all hormones into one bucket, synthetic hormones and bioidentical. Let me tell you, they are worlds apart. I will explain the difference to you today, and it's important for you to know the difference because a lot of practitioners don't know the difference, and the data that they're citing is based on sources that didn't differentiate those two either. And then the practitioners that don't know how to help you. Now, I'm not here to shit on practitioners today. Like, obviously, physicians are a very, very important part of society in general, but there are a lot that aren't educated in hormones specifically unless they go out of their way and attend some fellowship or go to some kind of educational space where they can get this information. It's very unlikely that they will, A, know which labs to ask for, and B, know how to interpret those labs so they can actually help you. And so if you walk in, there's two scenarios. You're in the normal range and symptomatic, so they just shrug, do nothing, or you're out of the range and unsymptomatic, they do nothing. Either way, you're screwed. And so I'm gonna arm you with a lot of information today and a lot of questions to ask so that you can advocate for yourself and get help with this. If you have deficient hormones, you are at far greater risk of all-cause mortality, breast cancer, every comorbidity you can think of, than you are having optimal hormones. Synthetic, bad. Bioidentical, good. Everybody got that? Okay. That's another big takeaway. And again, men don't have to do anything to get hormones. Women have to fight, and you may have to be prepared to do so. So first, real quick, show of hands. How many of you think that your hormones are keeping you from losing weight? Okay. A few are not being honest. Okay, cool, good. All right. Here's the hard truth, guys, and I do this because I love you. I do this because I work in the body transformation space. I do this because I know how the human body works, and I do this because taking ownership of this is the thing that will set you free, and you can't get to where you want to be with your body unless you have this part, and that is your lifestyle. Nobody in here is a special snowflake. We all abide by the laws of thermodynamics. Energy balance still matters. I'm not going to dumb it down and say eat less and move more, but kinda. It's more nuanced. It's relative to your lifestyle. But at the end of the day, if you want to lose body fat, you still have to expend more energy than you're consuming. Now I'll kind of go into that in depth here. So, quick lesson on energy balance. Here's how all humans burn calories, including everyone in this room. And so when you think about weight loss, you have an input column and an output column. Input's calories consumed, output is energy expended, okay? In that expenditure column, the output column, you have 4 categories. You have your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. That's how many calories you burn just functioning to run your body. The more muscle tissue you have, the more expensive your body is to run. The shorter you are, the less calories you burn at rest. So people who are under 5'3", you're really screwed because you're gonna have to move more to expend the same amount of calories. Sorry, it's just the truth, it sucks. You have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's a fancy way to say how much are you walking? What is your step count? How many of you are tracking your steps? Show of hands. Good bit of you. Good. That's one of the easiest things you can do to break through a fat loss plateau. Just move more. And so this is up to 15% or more of your energy expended. Thermic effect of food, we burn calories digesting food. Protein has the highest thermic effect of foods. The more protein you eat, the higher that category is going to be. The smallest little sliver here, this itty bitty little Buddha, is exercise. Exercise is the smallest sliver at around 5%. Why is that? It's 30 minutes to an hour of your day. There's 24 hours in a day. It's a very small percentage of your total time spent. And so, yes, definitely want to advocate exercise, but we think about what you're doing the other 23 hours of the day. That's where the money is made with fat loss. What do hormones do? Just really very generally, estradiol and progesterone, they impact sleep. They impact temperature regulation, where and how you store body fat. So your body fat distribution, especially entering menopause, changes. Thyroid impacts your basal metabolic rate, your body temperature, your insulin sensitivity, your energy levels, your mood, depression, all kinds of things. Testosterone, muscle gain, insulin resistance again, recovery, libido, state of well-being. So they impact a lot of things. What they don't do is they don't make you eat more protein. They don't walk for you. They don't gain awareness of your caloric intake. And they don't strength train for you. Do they directly impact your weight loss or gain? Absolutely not. But they can make you feel a lot less like doing all the things encompassing that output column. So here's what happens as we age, generally. Not accusing anyone in this room, but generally, when we get older, we don't lift weights as much. We aren't, emphasizing progressive overload. We're not lifting weights in a way that we can quantifiably say we're getting stronger from one week to the next. Cardio, people tend to overemphasize cardio instead of weightlifting. Definitely need cardio, but when it comes to the body that most, again, I'm speaking from experience working with women for almost a decade, you need to lift weights. That is going to get you the tone, the lean look that you want. And so if you overemphasize cardio, you're not building the muscle that maintains your basal metabolic rate. And as we age, if we don't do that, and on top of that, we don't eat protein, your basal metabolic rate starts to come down because you're losing skeletal muscle, which puts you at far greater risk of osteoporosis, bone density loss, etc. And so your basal metabolic rate reduces. So all of a sudden, one day, the same stuff doesn't work anymore. So what do? You eat less. When you eat less, you have less energy to put into the output column, right? And so both the input and the output starts to shrink a little bit as we age. On top of this, a lot of us have sedentary jobs, a lot of us work remote. And so if you have a sedentary job, the non-exercise activity comes down, you're walking less. Kids, now you're eating their leftover Easy Mac, their chicken nuggets, I know I do. You have Uber Eats, DoorDash, all the conveniences that we have now, TV, phone, weather, so you're walking less as a rule. The population walks less as they get older. The RDA, so the recommended daily amount of protein for women is 46 grams. That's what my 5-year-old eats, exactly. So less protein equals muscle loss equals decreased BMR, lower BMR. Now what used to be a deficit is now a surplus, because here, going back to input, output has to be lower than output consistently in order for you to lose weight. And so if that column shrinks, it's all of a sudden caught up with the input column. So what do? You eat less, and now you feel less like doing this. So this comes down, and they just shrink, and they just shrink, and they just shrink. And that leads us to the menopausal energy balance problem. Your columns have erectile dysfunction. So you're barely burning. Because you're barely burning, you have to eat like a baby lizard to lose weight. Because you eat like a baby lizard to lose weight, you have no energy to fuel the energy expenditure. Healthy bodies, so lean, good body composition, vitality, high output, high input. They're moving a lot and they're fueling that movement, right? Unhealthy bodies have really high input, very low output, right? So they're eating a lot and they're barely moving. Stagnant bodies, which is what we see a lot in the demographic that we serve, which is women 35 to 55-ish, have low both. So you're trying to lose weight, but you're at the point where if you eat any less, you'd be eating less than a toddler eats, but then again, you're not losing any weight, but you also don't feel like moving more because you're barely eating. So that's a very, very hard problem to get out of, and that we help a lot of women get out of that conundrum. And so there's a lot of text on this slide, but basically this is how you maximize each category of your output column. So NEAT, walk more, stand more. Download a step tracker, get a weekly total, beat last week, beat last month. Don't overcomplicate it. I get a lot of questions online. How should I walk? Can I walk indoors? Should I walk backwards?
He's not joking.
I'm not joking. What if I wear ankle weights? What if I wear a weight vest? Do steps on a Stairmaster count? I'm like, just walk. Just walk. Just walk. I'm losing hair. Thermic effective food, eat high protein foods. It's pretty simple. Just ChatGPT high protein foods. Say, give me 50 of them and just eat more of that shit. And try to eat over 100 grams a day. Exercise, lift weights. You don't need to perfect. You need to, if you're not used to lifting weights, commit to sucking at it. We all suck at things when we first start doing them, and the more you're committed to sucking at it, the quicker you'll get better at it. Everyone sucks when they just start. Dumbbells at your house are enough. You don't need a gym membership. Just get stronger. Ask for help if you need it. I guarantee any dude in the gym, if you go up to him and ask him for help, you have instantly stroked his ego. He will have now positioned him as the expert. So I promise you he will be more than happy to help you, whether it's correcting your form or what have you. And then basal metabolic rate. This is where we go beyond weight loss, because weight loss is only part of the equation. We don't have a weight loss problem in this country. It's a weight maintenance problem. And so people who have high BMRs are able to maintain their weight, and you do that, again, lifting weights, protein intake, walking. This is going to get repetitive. So how do we increase BMR long term so you don't have to walk your ass off or diet your ass off to lose body fat? This right here, in summary. So one thing I want you to take away from this, because I've just went ham on lifestyle, I tell all of our hormone clients this, and this is because with integrity, I could not tell any woman that if you take these hormones, all your problems are going to be solved. If you have optimal hormones, but your lifestyle is poopy, you will feel better, but you will look exactly the same. Combine the both, and hormones are like rocket fuel, but you cannot get the body or health that you want without also living the lifestyle to accompany it. So just some general, increase your protein intake to 100 plus grams daily. You're already eating 3 times as much as the average woman does. Walk, so increasing your steps, again, impacts 15% or more of your calories burned. And more muscle equals higher BMR, makes you toned for life, prevents bone density loss, and it's fucking cool. And no, you will not get bulky. You need to get strong as fuck. Get as strong as you possibly can. And I promise you that is one of the best things you can do for the rest of your life. Comment detox, and then you get an email and it's like 50 different things. There is no detox or potion or supplement you can take that can bring a hormone back from the dead. There's a lot of what I call nebulous terms. What is a nebulous term? Nobody can define it. One of those terms is balance your hormones. Does anyone in here know what that means?
No.
Nobody knows what it means. It's provocative. It gets people going. But listen, that term means absolutely nothing. Your hormones aren't meant to be balanced. Everybody has different amounts of hormones, and where you feel best or optimal varies. And that is based on a lot of things I'll explain to you here in a minute. Menopause diets, perimenopause diets, PCOS diets, these things are fucking nonsense. They don't exist. There's not a specific way you should eat just because you're in perimenopause or menopause. Thank you, ChatGPT, for these lovely images. So here's the what. So your sleep sucks, your energy drains, your mood destabilizes, hot flashes, brain fog, irregular cycle, belly fat accrual. I mean, it's a host of symptoms that are very similar to what you experience in menopause. But here's the why. I don't know why the text is over that, but I'll explain what it says. In perimenopause, outside of people who have had total hysterectomies, which is where you've had complete removal of the ovaries and everything, it's a deficiency in progesterone. Why does progesterone start to decline? You lose something called the inhibin protein. What does the inhibin protein regulate? FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. What does follicle stimulating hormone regulate? Estrogen. And so when you have the loss of the inhibin protein, your estrogen goes up. Meanwhile, your progesterone's going down. This is what people, I'm sure you've heard this term, estrogen dominance. This is not necessarily because of the super dominant estrogen. It's because there's no progesterone to oppose the effects that having excess estrogen can have on your body. And so that's why that happens, just so you know moving forward. It's loss of the inhibin protein, which leads to dysregulated FSH. Dysregulated FSH leads to high estrogen. Meanwhile, your progesterone's going down. And that is also what happens if you're still having your menses. You have that disparity between progesterone and estrogen, which causes a lot of the PMS symptoms. And so when you have deficient progesterone, you also have dysregulated cycles, you have worse PMS, and a lot of this is solved with bioidentical progesterone, which I'll talk about in a minute. So what about menopause? Menopause is all of that plus a lot more. Anxiety, loss of libido, brain fog, vaginal atrophy, metabolic decrease, headache, migraines, and the dreaded menopause belly. It's marked by 12 months of cessation of menses, so you haven't gotten your period in 12 months, elevated FSH, and temperature dysregulation. And so here's what menopause belly is. I just want to add a slide for this because a lot of people fear it and don't understand it. It's the accumulation of abdominal fat in the belly. And why this happens is there's actually 6 forms of estrogen. Estrogen is actually a class of hormones, right? There's 3 bioidentical estrogens. Estradiol is the one that is primarily secreted by the ovaries. And so when you lose estradiol in menopause, you have receptors in your midsection that are now essentially fried. And what happens is it's not that you start gaining weight at a higher rate. It's your distribution of your body fat changes, and you're more prone to storing it in the middle, and that's why it leads to gain in visceral fat as well. So you have subcutaneous fat, which is just regular body fat. You have visceral fat, which accumulates in the midsection near the organs. And that is why menopause belly is very hard to get rid of. On top of that, it causes insulin resistance. When you have insulin resistance, it's very hard to get rid of visceral fat. And so again, without optimal levels of the hormones that I'll go over, namely estradiol and menopause, you can't reverse insulin resistance. It's very hard. It also hinges on thyroid as well, which I'll talk more about. But you also have declines in testosterone, thyroid, and melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone. It's secreted by the pineal gland. And so if you don't have adequate amounts of it, you will not only not be able to go to sleep, you won't be able to stay asleep as well. And you combine that with a progesterone deficiency, now your sleep's all fucked up. So don't worry, I'm going to tell you how you can fix it. So what do you do about it? Step 1 is get lab work. If you guys want to screenshot this, you can. This is the exact panel that we run at Slay. Or if you're working with a practitioner who's cool and wants to help you with your hormones, this is exactly what you need to ask for. It's not an extensive list, but it is what you need. I would say the only nice to haves would be IGF-1 and vitamin D3. I would get those if you could, but everything else we absolutely need. I really want to emphasize free T3 as a part of your thyroid panel. Free T3 is active thyroid hormone. It's the metabolically active thyroid hormone. Most physicians won't even test it, and yet it's the culprit for most of the symptoms you experience of thyroid deficiency. And so,
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you advocating that somebody who's not even feeling perimenopause, that they get this done for a baseline, or when should they start doing that?
yes.
I was going to add a question on timing.
Yeah, no, I'm sticking around for questions at the end. I'm happy to answer any question. If you have a question, write it down. I'll answer everything at the end. But just to answer that question, if you're proactive, you'll be better off. The reason is you want to get lab work before any of this happens, so you have a baseline for where you feel good at. That way, when you start to feel shitty, you can look back and get new labs then and say, and compare them and say, okay, my progesterone's definitely declined. In the off chance, or actually in the very likely chance that your practitioner doesn't believe you, you can show them those 2 pieces of lab work and be like, you gonna disagree with me now? So yeah, I definitely recommend anybody get lab work. Just to have, if it's not happening yet, if you're in your early 30s or you're not feeling any symptoms of perimenopause yet, get them now so you know you have a baseline for where you feel good at. How many of you experienced this? You got the physician there with his diploma behind him, and you feel like shit, and you've maybe gotten lab work, but then he shows your lab work and says, see, you're in between these 2 hash marks. Do you guys know those lab ranges are based on a sickly, elderly male populace? That most of the literature we have on hormones is based on a sickly, elderly male populace? Normal doesn't mean shit anymore. If you take away something else from the day, I'm gonna say this several times, normal is a fucking washing machine setting. It is not a gauge for your quality of life. And so just because you fall between those 2 hash marks on a piece of paper, which by the way, the ranges are huge, so thyroid, for instance, 1.0 to 4.0 for your free T3, if you're 1.1, most physicians will tell you, you're normal, you're good, there's nothing we can do, even though that's horribly low on the scale. And where you fall on that range will have a huge, tremendous impact on how you feel day to day and how your body functions. There's also other factors that go into why those lab ranges are kind of bullshit, but they're great for establishing a baseline, not so much treating over time. And so optimal, I also want you guys to hear this. Optimal is where you feel best. I get asked a lot, what's the optimal level of testosterone for women? What's the optimal level of progesterone, of estradiol, of thyroid? It's completely relative to where you feel best, and this is why it takes a very skilled practitioner who knows to treat the patient and not the numbers. Very, very important that you work with a practitioner who's going to keep titrating or adjusting dosages until you feel optimal. And some of you may not even know what optimal feels like, but you'll know it when you get there, I promise you. Normal means nothing if you feel like garbage. Keep advocating until you get the hormones that you need. And then again, who interprets the labs makes or breaks your long-term quality of life and health. And so it needs to be someone who specializes in hormones there. You know, endocrinologists sometimes can be good. OBGYNs, nothing against them, but they're sexual and reproductive health. They don't get education in hormones. And so they tell you either you're normal or they try to throw birth control at you. Need to go somewhere else or get a second opinion. So here's the difference between synthetic and bioidentical hormones. So synthetic hormones do not have the same molecular structure as the hormones in your body. Your body has to convert it to a usable form. It does not behave the same way in your body. Example, synthetic progestins, aka birth control, Depo-Provera, IUDs. Those are not progesterone. Those are progestins, long-term, associated with adverse side effects, health risks. There's a lot of stuff coming out on Depo-Provera lately, more and more as time goes on. Those are not bioidentical hormones. Bioidentical hormones have the same molecular structure as the hormones your body naturally produces. Minimal risk and side effects, if any. Optimize both health and quality of life long-term, preventative cardiovascular disease, bone density loss, and protective against cancer, especially bioidentical progesterone. Synthetic has more risk and adverse side effects, long-term can cause a lot of harm, and they worsen insulin resistance. And you can throw those in the same bucket as statins. Sometimes statins are necessary, but this should not be a long-term answer for cholesterol or blood sugar. Oftentimes they treat surface level symptoms, so that's where birth control comes in. A lot of times they will use birth control, synthetic progestin, to try and treat PCOS, try and treat irregular periods, but that doesn't fix the root level dysfunction of depleted progesterone. So examples of that again, birth control, IUD, Premarin, Provera. Examples of bioidentical hormones, so you have estradiol, that's E2 on lab work, most potent and predominant estrogen before menopause. You completely lose it during menopause. It's primarily secreted by the ovaries. Estriol and estrone, not very commonly used in BHRT, but they are bioidentical estrogens. Confused again with progestins, it's in red, so you know it's important, which are synthetic and not bioidentical. Desiccated thyroid, so Armour, NP thyroid, Nature Throid, those are examples of desiccated thyroid. That's a natural mix of T3 and T4 from porcine thyroid glands. So that's bioidentical, but they're animal derived. Sometimes you have to kind of experiment and see which one works best with your body. I'm on NP thyroid, I've been on NP thyroid for years. And so T3, again, active thyroid hormone. T4, inactive thyroid hormone. Your body has to convert T4 to T3. So quick thyroid lesson, you have your pituitary gland. It sends thyroid stimulating hormone to your thyroid gland, which is right here in your throat. Thyroid gland produces T3 and T4. Your body has to convert T4 to T3 elsewhere in your body, in the liver, the kidneys, and to a lesser extent the gut and other organs. And so if you don't convert well, it means you're not going to have very high T3. There's also what's called receptor site resistance, where you don't metabolize the hormone at the tissue level as well as your female counterparts. And that can also impact having normal labs, but feeling like trash, because you're not, even though that hormone is here on the range, you're not metabolizing at the tissue. So it doesn't matter what level you have. Again, that's why you want to you work with a practitioner who treats the client and not the numbers. DHEA is a little bit less talked about, but it's a very important adrenal hormone. Why? Because it directly opposes cortisol. If you have concerns about your cortisol outside of any Cushing's disease or any kind of long-term chronic dysfunction with cortisol, look at your DHEA. Your DHEA regulates cortisol, and it's also a precursor for other hormones like testosterone and estrogen. Bioidentical estradiol. So again, I know I'm blasting you here, it's a lot of information. Estrogen's a class of hormones. Estradiol is the only estrogen that's naturally produced by the ovaries. It's the most potent form of estrogen, has the highest binding affinity, protects against heart disease, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, stroke, memory loss, protects against vaginal atrophy, urinary incontinence, and UTIs. It prevents menopausal hot flashes and temperature dysregulation. And again, estrogen dominance, usually it means progesterone deficiency. It's your progesterone is low relative to your estrogen. You need progesterone to oppose estrogen, because too much of anything can be detrimental, and if you have too much estrogen, you need progesterone to offset that. Hot flashes and temperature swings are hallmark menopause symptoms, and estradiol can help relieve both. Progesterone, all women need progesterone. All women. No woman should be without progesterone. It is the feel-good hormone. There are receptors throughout your entire body, the uterus, the breast, the vagina, the blood vessels, bone, and the brain. And so when you introduce progesterone, there is a full body fuck yeah feeling. I can tell you, our slay clients would never let us take their progesterone from their cold, dead hands. They love their progesterone. It stimulates GABA receptors in the brain. That's why it helps you sleep. Those of you who have taken sleep supplements probably saw GABA in it. Progesterone stimulates those receptors, protects against breast cancer, protects blood vessels in the brain, and its effect with estradiol is synergistic. You need both. And it's great for postpartum depression. So if you're having trouble sleeping, I highly recommend looking into progesterone. Thyroid. So as I was saying earlier, your free T3 levels are what tell the story. A lot of people are prescribed levothyroxine or Synthroid. Synthroid is just T4. It does not resolve symptoms for a lot of women. There's a great book written on this called Rethinking Hypothyroidism by Dr. Antonio Blanco, where he goes in depth on this. There's a lot of reasons why that doesn't solve the problem. If you have a conversion issue and you're just throwing T4 at it, but you're not converting it, we're not getting any higher T3. If you have receptor site resistance, coincidentally, women over 40 who take Synthroid, the enzyme responsible for conversion is called deiodinase, and that downregulates when you introduce Synthroid to women over 40. Thyroid regulates your temperature, your metabolism, your cerebral function, energy levels, increases metabolism and fat burning, supports weight loss, and lowers cholesterol. By the way, side note, PCOS manifests in many different ways, but more and more we're finding that it's very, very closely tied with insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is very closely tied with thyroid hormone. And so if you fix thyroid, oftentimes you have this cascade effect of being able to reduce the visceral fat that can come with insulin resistance and reduce a lot of the symptoms that women experience in PCOS. Three main causes of thyroid dysfunction. Over time, the amount of thyroid hormone decreases secondary to a decreased production by the gland. You have the decreased conversion from T4 to T3, and you have receptor site resistance causing symptoms of low thyroid despite appearing normal on lab work. Thyroid's a really tricky one, but it's often the most misdiagnosed hormone that we have. And so a lot of physicians will look solely at thyroid stimulating hormone and diagnose just based on that and not even look at T3. That's why I want all of you to advocate getting your free T3 levels checked in addition to your TSH. Testosterone, it won't do that. It won't do that. How many of you think it will do that? Anybody? Okay, good. I just wanted to make that clear. It won't do that. That's not what it's going to do. It improves your fat metabolism, increases bone density. And so, quick note on bone density loss. In order to deliver calcium into your bones, you need certain hormones, DHEA, estradiol, and testosterone. If you don't have optimal levels of those hormones, it doesn't matter how much calcium you take, it will not be delivered into the bone. This leads to decreased bone density. And increases the risk of osteoporosis. When it comes to osteoporosis, a lot of people don't think about this, but if you sustain an osteoporotic fracture, a lot of people end up in nursing homes. Of the women confined in nursing homes due to osteoporotic fractures, 30% of them die in the first year of being confined in nursing homes. I didn't learn that until recently, but that's a thing. And so when I talk about these things, a lot of you may not be thinking about it now, but if you are proactive about this, you'll prevent these things from happening because you never thought about it to begin with. Enhances physical endurance. I mean, there's a ton of benefits of testosterone. One of which I really want to highlight because for some reason, I've been, again, working with women almost a decade, and the obsession with collagen blows my mind. I will tell you this, the precursors for collagen production in your body are vitamin C and testosterone. And so if you have suboptimal testosterone levels, that's where you will start to lose your collagen production. So you have healthier, firmer skin, improves insulin sensitivity, especially once you've been optimal for over a year. That's when the insulin sensitivity benefits really start kicking in. Reduces visceral fat accumulation. Visceral fat is a silent killer. Supports healthy cholesterol levels and strengthens pelvic floor muscles. Can reduce incontinence risk. Damn, that's a lot of benefits. Also, cognitive function, motivation and drive, sexual reproductive health benefits, you guys get it. There's a shit ton of benefits with testosterone. The reason I listed more of these on here for testosterone is because a lot of women are skeptical about testosterone. But I can tell you that you will not grow a bulge, you will not grow a mustache. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen unless you take copious amounts. DHEA, just go over these real quick. Again, adrenal hormone influences cortisol. It has a inverted relationship with cortisol. So the better your DHEA is, the lower your cortisol will be, or more regulated. It does have the ability to inhibit the development and growth of breast cancer and stimulates bone formation. So DHEA, again, not often talked about. The cool thing about DHEA is this. If you are skeptical or uncomfortable with testosterone, DHEA is a precursor for it. So oftentimes we prescribe a little bit of DHEA, and either that brings testosterone up or it allows us to prescribe a lower dose of testosterone. So DHEA is a really cool hormone that's often not talked about. I will say over-the-counter DHEA is trash. It is not metabolically available to your body, especially the 7-keto. Doesn't convert to anything. So if you've been buying over-the-counter DHEA, I would recommend you go with prescription. It's just safer, more bioavailable, it's micronized, and it's sustained release. And so you compare that to like a shot of espresso to like a cold brew sip throughout the day. DHEA, sustained release, releases out throughout the whole day and gives you a more constant introduction of that hormone. Melatonin, produced by the pineal gland, decreases with age. It's a very powerful antioxidant. Over-the-counter melatonin is complete trash as well. It peaks at 2 hours and then it sharply declines. So you can fall asleep, but you're not going to stay asleep. Whereas sustained release melatonin has a 6-hour release window, and so you'll not only go to sleep, you'll stay asleep. I track my sleep. I've used Aura, I've used a Whoop watch, and as soon as I introduced prescription melatonin, my REM sleep doubled. It went from 2.5 hours to nearly 5. And so I have the anecdotal evidence for myself, but everybody that takes it at Slay loves it. So to wrap it all up, okay, so that was a lot, right? Are your brains fried? No? Okay. I kind of blew through it. That's good. My biggest thing that I want you guys to know is that I listened to women for many, many years who felt like shit and didn't have anywhere to go. And I do this because I want you to know you have a choice. Even if I'm not here to sell you Slay today, what I'm here to do is give you the right information so you can advocate for yourself, whether it's with Slay or with anyone else. If you have questions about how to find a good practitioner, I can help you with that. Slay is only in 15 states, so we're not in every state. The telemed regulations are crazy. State, they change every day, and so we can't be in every state, unfortunately. If you're not in a Slay state, I'm happy to help you find a practitioner anyway. I have access to a network of providers who share a philosophy at Slay, so you're not out of luck if you can't hop on with Slay. But I want you all to have the right information because there's so much bullshit out there. All of this, everything I just said is backed by the most current medical literature on hormones, all of it. We have all that available on our website. Everything that I say is backed with a study or 5. And so everything that I said today, I know there's probably some fears about hormones or maybe you've had some misinformation. I hope today gave you some levity and some confidence to pursue hormone replacement if you didn't have a lot of information on it, you've been curious. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a free gift. That's right. So get your cameras out. And we created a free Ultimate Guide to Your Hormones ebook. And if you scan that QR code, it will take you directly to it. On top of that, it'll take you right to the Slay site as well. So all you have to do is enter your email, and then it'll send it right to you. So I'll give you guys a chance to do that. And then I'm actually going to have Kate come up here as well with me, and we'll answer any questions you have. Kate and I both own Slay, and we work with people every day, and Kate's been in this line of work as long as I have, so, and she's way smarter than me, so,
No.
but if anybody has some questions here, I'm happy to answer.
So, I'm sorry, this might be the troublesome. I'm like in perimenopause and
Yeah.
I'm doing my own struggle on figuring things out. So you talked about labs. What have you found as far as timing of labs? Because there is some differences for women in perimenopause, maybe approaching menopause, on when to get the labs because our hormone levels are going crazy of how to time some of that. So do you have additional information on your background and when
I can tell you
in your cycle you should go get those?
a good practitioner, it won't matter. They'll know what they're looking at. And you'll probably disclose that on an intake form. And so you can disclose that when you submit the labs, whatever. But like I asked that same question to our practitioner at Slay, who's amazing, and she said it doesn't matter. A good practitioner will know what they're looking at. They can discern that regardless of your time in your cycle based on your stage of life and other factors. But yeah, it really shouldn't matter. I know a lot of people stress about that, and they're like, well, I have to time it with my cycle. You really don't. Any practitioner who's been doing it for a while will know what they're looking at. Some things I say today might harshly conflict.
No, so here's what I would say from somebody who's done the medical school thing. You're absolutely right in that most of us, even those that I think are OBGYN trained, and I'm not OBGYN trained, I'm emergency medicine, so full disclosure, are not well trained in hormones. Like we're not. You're absolutely 100% on in that we get very little training on that in medical school. And unless it's going to directly impact your specific specialty, you're not going to get trained on it. And I would argue, and I'm not OBGYN, but that even the OBGYNs, it's hit or miss.
It is.
It's
hit or miss.
scary.
Usually miss.
And this should be their thing, right? This, like perimenopause, menopause should be a thing. And it's not, because we in medicine have horribly missed the boat on women's health and this piece. But I mean, as I'm learning more in my own experience of perimenopause and all of the horribleness that it is, like it's a roller coaster. So like, but it isn't a normal cycle anymore. And so like, oh my gosh, like I get tested 1 week and then another week, and I don't know that even and I'm an academic, so right, I got the advantage of I can try and pick out an academic physician who should be on top of their game, and even I'm like, I don't know if I can find somebody who can like try and interpret this and week 1 versus week 3, like it's a tough
Yeah,
deal
it
to
happens a
find
lot.
Somebody who is comfortable and experienced, and I'm really sorry to share that with all of you, but like, I'm sorry that we have failed women in medicine.
Well, I think that it's just the way that it has been set up in medicine. I've been in medicine for 20 years as on the executive side, the sales side, in labs and pharmaceuticals and consulting and all that. It's the way that it's been set up to help heal people with symptoms and sickness, but it's like it's not personalized, and hormones are extremely personal. And I think that's where it goes off the rails, is they're trying to put us all in a bucket. Like he said, all these ranges are just ranges for like apparently an aging male population.
Yeah.
They don't do the studies on women because
No.
That was the vulnerable population, especially no woman who could be pregnant or absolutely is pregnant, because that was it's to this day still too risky. So we don't.
Yeah, they don't want to touch it.
Based off that.
And speaking of the personalization of it, one thing I didn't mention was the advantage of compounded hormones. And I don't know how much you all know about compounded hormones, and I know there's probably varying degrees of on the efficacy and safety. I will say this. Compounded bioidentical hormones are not FDA approved. However, all facilities that we use at Slay are FDA regulated and PCAB accredited. So that's the Pharmacy Compounding Accreditation Board. So even though they're not FDA approved, that's because they're not standardized dosing. That's the only reason. If they can patent a drug and put standardized dosing, it's profitable. If it's bioidentical and compounded, you can't patent it because it's not standardized dosing. That's the only reason why. It's monetary and political. But that being said, the advantages of a compounded hormone are that they can personalize the dosage to what you need. Off the top of my head, Slay states, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Texas, Ohio, Arizona, Oregon, New Jersey. No. New Jersey, Kentucky, Mississippi.
Are you just waiting for credentials?
You say Missouri?
Yeah, said Missouri. Yeah, I think that's it.
I think that's it.
And we're about to be potentially in Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's like every state's different with the telemed regs. It's
Licensing
crazy.
is
Like
different,
California is a no-go ever.
And then
New
telemed
York.
regulations are different. So
Yeah. Like some states require an in-person visit, and there's nothing we can do to get around that.
Just wanted to say, I don't know if anyone else in here is on Bioidenticals, but I have been now for a month and a half or so. Life-changing day and night. If you have any questions or even any thought that it's for you, talk to them, because it really has made, I don't know, like crazy amount of difference just in who I am, who I can stand in my life, because for a long time I hated everybody. Hated everybody. I hit perimenopause actually at 35, 36, and full menopause at 43. This is glorious. So I'm one of those that's really young to hit all the wickets, and I wish I had known about this years ago.
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. We're finding that women are hitting it was unheard of a few years ago for women to hit perimenopause at 35, and now we see it happening more and more. So, not uncommon. Say that again?
Agestin, Northindrome.
Those are progestins, correct?
Yeah.
Those are synthetic progestins. Those on the huge list of progestins, aka like the birth control that's been prescribed. It's like 200 different drugs. But yeah, I remember seeing those both on there. Yeah, and a lot of times, the practitioner, the OB, will say it's progesterone, and not knowing the difference, but it's progestin.
So I take a hormone blocking pill,
Tamoxifen.
and I was told that I should never take hormone replacement.
Got it. And I assume what?
Positive.
Yep. Okay. I will just tell you our philosophy at Slay, the philosophy of our medical team. Obviously, tamoxifen is not something that anyone would want to take long term. I will say that when it comes to estrogen-fed cancer, number one, obviously the risk profile is different with synthetic hormones versus bioidentical. At Slay, if you've been in remission or cancer-free for 5 years, that's something that we would, obviously our medical team would make the final call there based on your intake form, last scan, all that stuff. Even if you can't do estradiol, you can still do other hormones, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, whatever. And obviously it's all relative to you and your needs, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
So if it's estrogen and progesterone positive cancer?
It would depend on how long you've been in remission, or you've been cancer-free. And every practitioner is different. That's just what we do at Slay, and ultimately it's our practitioner's call. But they'll ask, obviously we screen for that, but then she'll ask you, how long has it been since XYZ, and then based on that she'll make a call. And but yeah, all the literature shows that the risk profile is very different with synthetic versus bioidentical. But yeah, ultimately I'd have to let the medical team make the call there.
Well, I don't know if that somewhat answers. So growing up, my mom was always you didn't do hormones because they cause, and I was told as a kid, no, it causes breast cancer.
I'm glad you
And
brought
she
this up.
did more of the natural approach. And even still now, she goes to more of a holistic doctor, which I've actually researched some of the stuff she's on. And I'm like, why are you on that? And she's like, because it helps this. And I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, holistic doctor is another one of those nebulous terms. Nobody really knows what it means, but it's provocative. So there was a study that came out called the Women's Health Initiative several years ago. And it was a very flawed study. It used grade D evidence. It used insurance, basically leftover data from insurance claims. Everybody in that study was already very unhealthy. They were predisposed to cardiovascular disease. Many of them were insulin resistant. And they used this as a fear-mongering tool basically for hormones. But what happened was they used all synthetic hormones in this study. But both the researchers and the people who reported the evidence conflated synthetic hormones with bioidentical hormones, and they put them all in the same bucket. The media then ran with it, and they just broadcasted everywhere, hormones cause cancer, when in reality they were using conjugated elonic estrogen, which is pregnant mare urine, horse piss, and synthetic progestins in conjunction, Premarin, which again is a synthetic estrogen. And that was the cause of all those adverse side effects. No bioidentical hormones were used in that study. And that study has been cited by physicians and the media for years, and it's just now coming out how flawed that study was. And so I don't know if that was where she got that information. Maybe she heard it from a doctor who also cited that study. But we're finding that all that data was completely irrelevant to bioidentical hormones. And so, again, the risk profiles are completely different, but a lot of the old data, it was just very shitty data. It just...
Can you touch on, so HRT, just so y'all know, I have my baseline hormones, all that stuff done, because as soon as I go through menopause, I'm calling them up or somebody that I trust to do this stuff. I'm getting on HRT because of the cardioprotectiveness and the fact that I'm gonna outlive my husband. I'm living to 100 years old, and my future husband is gonna want me to be. So I have big plans. So would you mind touching on that part of the cardioprotectiveness, if you can anyway?
Yeah, so, and this is where we can get into the delivery method as well. So obviously there's different forms of hormones. You have oral pills, you have creams, you have injectable, and some of the benefits vary between those delivery methods. For instance, with estradiol, the estrogen patch, which is so popular, a lot of people use that because they say estrogen causes blood clots. There's actually no data that says bioidentical estradiol causes blood clots. And in fact, if you don't take oral estradiol, you miss out on the plaque reversing benefits that you can get from oral estradiol. But yes, estradiol is plaque reversing and cardioprotective. Progesterone is also cardioprotective. Both of those things together synergistically are cardioprotective. You're at much, even if you start in your 60s, the risk from having optimal hormones, you're at less risk for all-cause mortality than you are you're at less risk with optimal hormones than you are if you have deficient hormones, right? Because there is a relative risk after the age of 60, but that's only in the first year of using hormones, and then it drops to 0.6 after a year, and at that point, the 0.6 is less of a risk than if you have deficient hormones. So. But yeah, and that goes for DHEA as well, also cardioprotective. Mm-hmm. So you have plaque reversal, heart health, and everything else that goes along with having optimal progesterone. It's also preventative of breast cancer.
Yeah, and the number one cause of death in women after menopause is a cardiovascular event. And why? It's because you lose estrogen immediately. Like, things go crazy. All of a sudden, you've got things that are putting you at that higher risk. And I don't know, this is my research anyways that I've looked into, so yes. I'm a big advocate.
Why are you supposed to, I don't know if you know the answer, but like when I've been to my physician, we just bounce from like one to the other. I've been on progesterone, estrogen, estradiol, like I don't even know what one I'm on now. It's not working. And now I'm on an antidepressant and a anti-anxiety and one to help me sleep and all this stuff. So I've heard, when I've asked to do a hormone panel, like 3 different OBGYN gynecologist doctors, like women doctors, have frowned on it, like the spit test or the blood test or the whatever test, whether I'm fasted or unfasted, or they say they're unreliable. Like, what serious, like I'm...
That sucks.
I think 2020 is when I...
Yeah. That sucks. Yep. And then that's the case for a lot of people, unfortunately. It's just, there's very few people who are educated on this stuff. One thing I will do is, somehow, I'll write it down. I have access to a provider network, so if you're not in a slave state, you go on that provider network, and every provider in that network will share a philosophy and will know what they're looking at. Okay. And so you don't get the runaround anymore. Okay. I will tell you that depression in menopause especially is very overdiagnosed. Very. A lot of times women feel depressed because they have deficient hormones. They prescribe an SSRI. It doesn't treat the actual the root of those symptoms. And so my mother went down that road. And so there's also clinical trials that they ran prescribing T3, so just the active thyroid hormone, alongside an SSRI. It was Zoloft in these clinical trials. And the effect of the SSRI was 10x with the T3. They took it away. It was, what's that?
I gained weight on that.
On T3?
No, Zoloft.
Oh, on Zoloft. Yeah. That makes sense. I was going to say that's
30 pounds in a month.
Yeah. Yeah, they can absolutely impact your BMR. and may also obviously make you unlikely to do other things too. But yeah, it's a problem. Thyroid has a big impact on symptoms of depression. And so does estradiol and progesterone, but it just sounds like you need to find someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
If you have a lot of other medical conditions, then how does that impact your ability to do any of this?
It's very nuanced. It would depend. Yeah. Now we at SLAE, I can't speak for anyone else. At SLAE, we do a very detailed medical intake form, and so you'd list all that on there. And then, as a part of like prior to your consultation, our practitioner would look over all that, go over all that with you.
Sadly, I'm not in one of your states.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Because this was all sounding really cool. But, so I have a question from that, being from like the medical billing world and all that stuff. So if obviously you're doing fee for service, you're not going through insurance, yeah?
Can't.
Okay, but you will take HSA,
Yes.
Yeah, all of that can be covered that way, right? So if y'all have FSA or HSA funds, you can use it for this. So if you're not having to go through it's just the licensing of the practitioner to be able to provide that service.
The licensing is easy. It's the actual telemed laws from state to state.
That's all it is. That's
it does have these weird requirements.
Nothing to do with coverage. It's just being able to do it.
Like California, for instance, you have to have
a client or a patient that's in across borders from a state that they hold licensure in is illegal.
Like California, we can't ship directly from pharmacy to client. It has to go pharmacy to clinic to client. And so unless we have a clinic in California, it doesn't work.
And every state is different on the regulations. Like New York will be a never.
Yeah.
But if you feel great right now and you're like, hey, I want to be proactive, I want to know where I'm at when I feel great, so that later on I have something to compare it to, you can go to Life Extension. I think it's called their comprehensive weight loss panel. It's just a comprehensive panel, it has nothing to do with weight loss, but it will pull all of these relevant labs. So you guys have them in the future if you need to. So if your doctor's not gonna pull them or you wanna bring it in, be like, hey, look, no, this is screwed up. You can do that if they will not order them for you. Their ability to interpret this stuff, my mom is a medical doctor, my sister's a registered dietitian, and I know more about health and wellness than both of them combined. And I don't mean that egotistically, I mean that genuinely. So they're not necessarily taught how to read labs, and that's why when you get your labs back and ask them why you feel the way you do, they don't know what the labs mean. They don't know the relationship between hormones, like you saw in the presentation. There's many of them that correlate to different symptoms. And so if they don't understand the relationship of the metabolic pathway between those hormones and the secretion values, they can't indicate what's wrong with you. And so they just go off, here's a paper, it says between these ranges, they're good. They're between these ranges, they're good. And that's all that they can do within their scope of practice, because they also don't want a lawsuit. So it's just making sure that you have the information that you need. Again, if you feel great now, I would encourage you to get some. And then in the future, if you need to advocate for yourself and they will not pull labs, if you can order them, they're like $260 online, so they're not cheap, but it is comprehensive. And you can advocate for yourself that way. They might give you a referral based on that. And that's at least a foot in the door. Hopefully their endo is a good one, but I would recommend that if necessary.
And then you said once we do that, then we can send them to you guys to have that looked at? No.
We don't. Only our physicians will review lab work, and so they do that based on our SLAE clients. Okay. But I said if you can find somebody to interpret them, that's the kind of blank spot that you'll have. You'll have the information that you're looking for. If you can bring that into your primary and say, hey, these are off, or I would like somebody to look at these, they may give you a referral because you have.
Because I have their web. So
yeah.
I go to Quest Diagnostic or something.
Yeah, I think they do Quest and they do, what's the other one?
LabCorp.
LabCorp.
Yeah, LabCorp.
Yep, LabCorp.
I get blood drawn all the time. I see a rheumatologist, I see a cardiologist, there's plenty of blood work on me. So I'm sure somebody's seen all this stuff at some point.
Yeah, and it's rough. And the other thing I'll say too, and I'm somebody who, I'm 32, I'm actually on bioidentical hormones. I work with SLAE personally for my own issues and reasons. But one thing that I got lost in is when people on the internet will tell you that you can use a holistic approach. Because you don't want to put hormones in your body, right? This will fix it for you. If you're perimenopausal or menopausal, your body's not producing the hormone in the first place. So putting something in that would make it amplify what over-the-counter or any type of naturopathic supplement does is it helps amplify what your body's already producing. If your body's not producing anything, there's nothing to amplify. And so knowing that if you're in that age demographic, it doesn't matter if you take chasteberry or whatever else that they might give you to help balance your hormones, that's not going to do anything for you, and it's only going to be a waste of money. So I know, like, in your mind when you see stuff like that, you're like, yeah, I feel like shit and I want that and I can afford it, so I'm gonna get that now. It's not going to actually solve that problem. So try not to get into the emotional impulsivity of making that decision, because nothing will change for you.
No. I tried a seed cycle one in 2019 when I first found out I was perimenopausal. It was like sesame seed for this long, flaxseed for this long, but
it did nothing but drive up your anxiety and piss you off even more.
And I was
Yeah.
putting on weight because
Yeah.
fat and it was
There's no bar to entry on social media. Anybody can say anything. So
I was paying for it.
yeah, they should put a big tax on microphones and cameras, because not everybody needs to have one.
We should put an IQ test.
That would be good too. Yeah, but then I couldn't do what I do. So
No.
Okay.
you can stand up and come up here if you want.
Would you like me to? Okay.
Would you advocate taking bioidentical hormones even if you don't feel like you have any symptoms? Or like me, I'm like 4 years past, but I want to live to be 100, Jenny.
Yeah.
Good girl.
And so I'm thinking, well, should I be replacing the things that obviously aren't there or if I feel good, should I just, I don't know.
Two scenarios. One, you still feel okay, but you are deficient in those hormones, and that does happen. I would still recommend at least, and any good practitioner is going to start with the lowest dose possible. I would at least,
They just slap you on HRT patches.
Okay, I mean that'll work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would still, you're still going to have your highest quality of life and your best long-term health outcomes with optimal levels of hormones, because they do so many things in your body. So I would still recommend it. The other scenario is that, and I'm not saying this is you, but a lot of people, it happens so subtly that people don't realize they feel like shit, and this is their new normal. And then once they're optimal, and again, I'm speaking from experience, seeing it with our clients, and when they're optimal again, they're like, holy shit. Like when Hallie in the beginning there, she said it quite well. She was like, I don't even remember what it was like to have a sex drive. And all of a sudden I was smelling my husband's laundry, and I was like, oh, and so sometimes you don't even realize what optimal is anymore, because you've gotten so used to crap. So you throw in, changes in your life, kids, priorities, and it's like you become on the back burner. And sometimes we don't even think about, well, I deserve to feel good too. But you do. So.
Well, it's painful too. Like, it's not that you don't have a sex drive, it's that it's also extraordinarily painful. Like, sorry, TMI, but
No, let it
dude, I thought I had an STD. It was so painful. I thought my husband was cheating on me and gave me cooties. And so I went
Not the cooties.
to OB/GYN and I asked for an STD panel, and like it was embarrassing. Like I had to tell him, and I hid it from him at first because I didn't, want to mess my marriage up. But it's bad. It hurts. It's very, very, very painful.
Yeah, there's actually, so we do vaginal suppository form of DHEA and progesterone at SLAY if people want that, and there's actually some localized impact of that can really help with rejuvenative properties there. So there's actually a lot of options. There's also testosterone cream that kind of does the same thing. That's the cool thing about the compounded world, is because we can do whatever form you need, whatever dosage you need.
In a combination, right?
Yeah, in a combination. So you can then you have to take less pills, because you've got estradiol and progesterone in one pill versus having 6 different pills you have to take. So.
Come on, girl. Sorry, I'm so sorry.